And what we're going to try and remember and to look at is the very first period in Albert's history of England. We're going to look at it a little differently from how we're going to look at the other 23, but this is the period at the start when the Ice Age ends. By the way, in our part of the world, we count the years backwards or forwards from when we believe Jesus was born. Some other countries and religions do it differently. We also put the letters BC for before Christ or AD for the time after he was born, after those numbers. AD stands for Anno Domini and is Latin and roughly means in the year since the Lord was born. So 8000 BC would be 8,000 years before Jesus was born. Since the earth was formed about 250 million years ago, the earth has gone from hot to cold, back to hot again. Not day to day, not week to week, but spread over thousands of years. This is how nature works, and this is how nature always will work. We can't change nature, but we do know now that some of the things that we've been doing in recent years can make a difference. Cutting down large forests in order to make places to live, burning fossil fuels to give us power, all have a damaging effect on our environment. We still won't be able to change nature, but if we make changes, if we do something about the way we live, we can and must make a difference. It was about 100,000 years ago that nature was going through that hot-cold cycle, and we began to move into an ice age. Ice and snow moved down from the North Pole, moved up from the south. About 20,000 years ago, the ice age was at its maximum, and that's how the world looked. There had been some human-like people living in England, and they had to move south, but it wasn't that difficult because in those days England was connected to Europe, so they didn't have to swim. Those people were called Neanderthals, and as they moved south they met up with migrating Homo sapiens who came from Africa and people from whom we're all descended. And then the Neanderthals just disappeared. Lost, without oh, they've gone. Oh dear. Well, there we are. Here are some pictures of some animals that might have been able to survive without moving south. Wait a minute, Albert. Why are you in there? Come on. How did you find food through the ice and snow? Oh, very funny. An Arctic vole. Yeah. Oh, they make them. Oh. Anyway, the United Kingdom is made up of 4 different countries, and we're just looking at England on this website at the moment. But connected to the top of England, to the north, is Scotland. On the left of England is the west, and that's Wales. And a bit further west is Northern Ireland, which is the northern part of a separate island called Ireland. The countries of England, Scotland and Wales are known as Great Britain. When the Ice Age was at its coldest, the United Kingdom couldn't be seen under snow and ice, and the seas around us were also frozen over. Now this covering of ice and snow has made a big difference to our landscape when it melted. When snow falls in one winter, and because it's so cold it doesn't melt in the following summer, when more snow falls the next winter, it forms something called a glacier. Little fact for you here, snow is just frozen fresh water, but it's fresh water, not salt water like you get in the sea. Today, 3/4 of all the fresh water on Earth is contained in glaciers. In the last ice age, glaciers covered 33% of the land. But the bad news is glaciers don't stay the same size. If there's more snow in the winter than has melted, then the glacier will grow, and if more melts and less falls, then the glacier will shrink. This is a picture of the Franz Josef Glacier that I took when I was in New Zealand in 2006. The end of the glacier is known as the terminus. Glacier is usually snow, then ice, then some fresh water, which has either seeped through the snow or has melted a bit. So a glacier is a bit like a frozen river. And that's the big problem, because glaciers and rivers both move. The mountain glaciers, like the Franz Josef that you can see, go upwards or down. Other glaciers, the ones that cover most of Greenland and Antarctica, are actually called ice sheets, and they move outwards or inwards. The other thing about the glaciers is that not all bits of it move at the same time. And this results in something called a crevasse, which is just a big gap. Going back to 2006, when I was in New Zealand, I actually went for a walk on the Franz Josef Glacier. The first thing they do when they take you is you put crampons on your shoes, which are a bit like studs on football boots, with one very big difference. They are far more important. Slip on a football field and you might look stupid. Slip on a glacier, you might never be seen again. You might fall down a very deep crevasse. I thought that we might all be roped together, but then I thought about it again and thought, well, if I'm going to fall down the crevasse, why does everybody else want to come with me? And I looked at their faces and it was pretty obvious they didn't. If you look at the right-hand side of this picture, you will see some guy who has forgotten to read the rules on health and safety, because he's cutting the path for the day after's walk. Because as I said to you, the glacier moves and today's path that we walked on may not be there. Here's hoping he never looked back and admired what he'd done. Glaciers are very powerful when they move, and they'll carve a channel into the landscape and they'll move rocks and earth with them. Look at the end of that glacier and you'll see rocks and soil just in front of the terminal face. Now, when ice ages finish, obviously glaciers melt. And if the glacier is inland and not moving anymore, then it will have made a big dent in the land, and when it melts, you'll have a lake. And that's one reason why we have the Lake District in northwest of England. But other things happen too. Sometimes a very large chunk of ice might drop off the edge of a glacier if it's close to the sea, and they'll drop in to the already cold sea. Now, these bits that drop off are called icebergs. And if you look at them, they look very big, but 90% of it is actually underwater, and that makes a big difference when they melt. One of the things that will happen is that as icebergs melt, or as glaciers melt, the water level in our oceans will rise. There are several islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean where the highest point is only 5 meters above sea level. 5 meters is about the size of a bungalow, a bit higher. So if water levels rise by more than 5 meters, it is, unfortunately, goodbye Tuvalu. And that is why we have to do something. 18,000 years ago, that's a map of the United Kingdom and Europe. All the green part was land, and you could walk across, and the land was also very good for growing crops and things. And I bet the people were quite excited when they moved back. And don't forget, nobody would know how it was before because there was no books to read. Over the next 10,000 years, the sea level rose and the land then began to disappear.